Hello guys, welcome to the another Android tutorial. Today we are going to learn about the view binding in a Kotlin language. Let's get started. So the first thing you know about the view binding is a feature that allows us to write more code easily or in an easy manner that okay. So generally basically the idea about the view binding is it generates a binding class with the each XML file. Okay. So consider that just I have created one project in which for this particular main activity we have the android main.xml file. So when we are creating the view binding class, so activity main XML, it's create a view binding class for this particular activity main XML, which we can be easily used in our activity class. Okay. So it is very easy and it is replacing the findViewByIds. So as we know the traditional method about the findViewByIds, like suppose if I have created a one button over here and I have ID for that button is let's say btn1. Okay. Okay, now I have that ID. If I want to use this button in the main activity, then I have to follow the traditional way. Like suppose I can do like button equal to find view by ID and my object is button and I need to write it down r.id.button1. So this is the traditional way. But now we are going to implement the view binding, so we don't need this find view by ID. Okay. So first thing you need to do is you have seen the build.gradle scripts over here. Just go on to that one and here you can see the Android options over here, right? So in that Android option you need to write down build features. Okay. So write down properly build features and enter that one, and in that particular method or we can say in that particular function you need to write that view binding. Okay, just space it and enter true over here. Okay, we have done with it and just sync now. So when you can do this view binding equal to true, then all the XML files can be get binded with the particular view binding object. Okay. Okay, so first thing we have done, now we can and we have set up completely with the view binding. You have to done this thing only. Now we can go with the main activity, implement the view binding in the main activity. So I can go over here, I can enter the latent var and I can say binding object over here, and when I enter it I can say activity. As I have the main activity, so you have to type it activity main binding. Okay, so now we have declared the variable successfully. What we have to do is we can go after the super method. I can call that object binding equal to activity main binding dot inflate. Okay, currently we do not bind this object with this main activity, we can inflate that particular. So enter that activity main binding dot inflate and just pass the layout inflator object. Okay, and you have done with it. So after done this, you have to make a small change in this set content view, as instead of we are passing the r.layout.activity main, so just erase that one and just pass the binding dot root option over here. Okay, and now we have successfully implemented the view binding for the main activity class. Okay, so now after that when I need to use this particular button, as I have mentioned one button over here, and if I need to use that button into the main activity, what I need to do is I can just enter binding dot, here you can see that it will show the suggestion that button, and I can click on that, right? Suppose I can click on it and I can print a toast message like that way, like make text, and I can pass the object over here and I can say view binded, right? And I can just print that one. Yes, now we have done with the view binding is for the activity. So like we did for this activity, same thing we can do for the fragment, but there is a little bit change on that one. Okay, so now we can go for the fragment also. So I can show you in a simple way how you can use in a fragment, and for the time being we can select a blank fragment. Okay, and we can name it as a blank fragment. As now our blank fragment is getting created over here, so what we can do is we can go with that blank fragment XML file, and here you can see that they will already provided a one text view over here. So I can just put a id over there. Okay, so what I can give is the id is that button show title. Okay, I can go with the blank fragment. And now what you have to do is, previously for the activity we have written down the activity main. Okay, so now for this one, let int var, and I can say a binding over here and enter here. And now for the fragment you have to write it down. The first thing is fragment. Okay, when you write it down the fragment over here, then write down the blank binding, right? So here you can see that fragment blank binding, so it will get an object. So now we have this written object over here for this particular view. So now we can replace that view with our view binding. So enter over here, and for that binding, so bind this view. So like binding equal to fragment blank binding and inflate. So here you can do the same thing like the main activity, just pass the layout inflator. But now for the fragment you have to pass two other objects, like the container, that is your parent object, and as we don't have to attach it to the parent, so just write it down the false over here. So for this thing we can do done with the black fragment view binding. Okay, and same thing we can do with this fragment also, just we can replace with the default written view with this binding dot root, and we have done with the view binding. So now if I want to use this particular text view, then I can write it down binding dot show title. And if I want to set a text particular over here, let's say lazy developer. Okay, and you have successfully do for the fragment also. So like as I have shown you for this, so you can do for all these things.